this morning, but it's all good. Welcome to Let's Talk About It Media 21. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the show. I hope everyone's having a great morning. We're going to get to some hot topics, trending topics, what's going on in regards to the closing statements, what's going on with the trial. We're at day 32, and we're talking about day 31 and 32. That's what we're going to do for today. So come on in, like the video. As you guys come in, I'm going to go ahead and do my disclaimer. You know me. Got to do the disclaimer, baby. Protect the page, protect the page. So we're going to do that. Okay. Like the videos you guys come in. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships and research. Fair use is used permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged in our opinion and for entertainment purposes only. Okay. All right, you guys. Yes, we're going to come on, get in here. We're going to get to what's been talked about in the media. They're talking about closing statements. We're going to get into everything we need to get into. It's going to take people a few minutes to get in. So while I do that, I'm going to let Inner City Press talk about what's been happening in regards to the court case. Okay, come on, pull up. Okay. Just waiting for something on my side. Okay, there we go. So yeah, come on in. Like the videos you guys come in. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for supporting the show always, being kind in the comments. Yeah, I pretty much have pretty good people in the comments, and I appreciate it. Okay.
Day 32. Okay, here we are. Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press, here at the Southern District of New York Courthouse today, Thursday, June 27th. It's day 32 of the U.S. versus Sean Combs trial. Today, the defense closings. We're on our way in. Yesterday, the prosecution's closing by AUSA Slavic brought together a lot of threads, I will say. It's not so much the law when actually described in that context, not just on the dry piece of paper of a jury charge, but actually described orally to a jury, made it seem pretty easy to convict them, because it said, and I'm saying this just like, it changed my view in the sense that they don't have, there's a lot of things they don't have to find. On the transportation for prostitution or commercial sex work charge, they don't really have to show intent or anything. It seems very tricky. And on the RICO, they just have to find 2 incidents, and they can even be the same predicate. Those who thought that the U.S. letter dropping theories of liability concerning arson and kidnapping and aiding and abetting sex trafficking would result in a substantially different closing, we're incorrect, because it was all there. There was multiple references to Kid Cudi. There were multiple references to Capricorn Clark. So I think it would have been better to have, we got a lot of noise pollution here, but so be it. I think it would have been better for the defense. Okay, we got a garbage truck. We've got some leaf, we've got some trees being cut down, so apologies all around. In fact, okay, well, sorry for the noise pollution. This courthouse area is incredible, and I don't know. Actually, the city council here micromanages so many things. I'm kind of surprised they haven't gotten into the whole noise situation. In any event, we're heading in for the defense conference. Now, there's big news everywhere. There's the big, beautiful bill. Will it get done by July 4th? What about this Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough having so much power? Will Trump nominate a new Fed chief while Jerome Powell is sitting for almost a full year? Many questions. On the New York beach, Sebastian Telfair, one-time basketball phenom.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. I appreciate you all for being here. We're going to get into some more media in regards to this trial. Closing statement. Sometimes he'll start talking about a different subject. Hold on one second. Like the video as you guys come in, please. I know what I wanted to pull up for y'all. Let's see. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I started a little bit late. I had some stuff I had to take care of, and I enjoyed my morning.
A racketeering case against Sean now to the prosecution's closing arguments in the sex trafficking and racketeering case against Sean Diddy Combs. Jurors in the Manhattan courtroom hearing a systematic rundown of the evidence and allegations against the mogul, who denies all charges. And just a warning, the story contains accounts, descriptions, and visual content of actual or alleged events that some may find disturbing. Today, federal prosecutors in New York wrapped up their case against Sean Diddy Combs, an explosive trial that has captivated much of the world.
The case against Sean Combs has been heart-wrenching, shocking, disturbing.
It's been more than 6 weeks of sexually explicit, graphic, and emotional testimony, with
Yes.
34 witnesses taking the stand and over
Sad, but
1,000
true.
exhibits.
We saw a different side of Sean Combs. Not the mogul or the rapper or the industry leader, but someone who had very disturbing tendencies towards women and the people around him.
Combs is charged with sex trafficking, racketeering.
I have to be careful with that one. Hold on one second. Like the video, like the video.
New York City, well, in lower Manhattan today, Sean Diddy Combs thought his, quote, fame, wealth, and power put him above the law as he led a criminal enterprise for 2 decades using, quote, power, violence, and fear to carry out brutal crimes. That's what a prosecutor told a jury today at the music mogul's sex trafficking trial. Arguments. Fox News correspondent Connor Hansen with more details.
Prosecutors spent hours summing up the sensational month-long trial of Sean Diddy Combs. They say the music mogul actually ran a criminal enterprise, sometimes using his employees to commit arson, kidnapping, bribery, and sex trafficking. Much of the case centers around Combs' former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, and another who went by the alias Jane. The jury saw evidence like photos of guns found in Diddy's home, shocking video showing him dragging Ventura through a hotel hallway, and this voice message he sent to Jane.
I don't have no time for no games, baby girl. Me and you can be mad, I can have a spat, we can have whatever. Then after that, you better get on your job. That's really, that's all it is.
Do y'all remember when he was saying get on your job? And that's the biggest thing. People have to realize he's a corporation. He was Cassie's boyfriend yet producer, and he was asking her to do X, Y, and Z. And if she did not do that, he would hold things over her head, which is concerning. Let's continue fair use. There are laws that are being broken. Let's continue fair use.
Prosecutors say fear and intimidation allowed Combs to abuse the women for years, subjecting them to the now infamous hotel sex marathons called freak-offs. 34 witnesses were called to the stand, some under subpoena. The defense used lengthy cross-examinations to try to undermine the case, arguing while there was domestic abuse, that Combs did not commit federal crimes. Diddy did not.
How did he not? And it amazes me. And I get it. Lawyers have to get their bag, but you're getting your bag and defending him. So you'd be okay with him dating your mama. You'd be okay with him dating your sister. You'd be okay with him dating your niece. Stop playing. What these assistants, employees, and girlfriends went through is unacceptable. It's truly unacceptable. When you look at the bigger scope of things, you're a producer. Why aren't you producing? There's substance concerns. Employees have to put together stuff in the rooms, and then after you're done doing your whatever, they have to clean up the room so nobody sends out pictures about what you're doing. You shouldn't have to be worried about your hotels if you're doing the right thing, but they have to allegedly go in there and put white sheets down on the furniture, on the floor, on the beds. They have to put stuff down, and then they have to come and clean up after you. So the employees probably were happy when he was MIA having his alone time, because at least they get a break until he's ready to resurface. You know what I mean? But other than that, it was a constant. They said he did. I'm sure he slept, but they said he likes to keep busy. But that's what we're hearing more so of. And it's interesting, even with some of the lawsuits, it's surprising that people aren't saying, okay, and they kind of did, but it's like he was supposed to be producing this, and I was concerned about something that was going on. Where's the driver? The driver had to hear so much. Where's the bodyguard? The bodyguards had to hear so much. Where are they? Doing interviews. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Take the stand.
I'll tell you, worse than not calling anyone is calling people who are not all that helpful to you and may backfire against you. So it could have just been merely a function of they don't have anyone who might support this man.
Diddy's defense team is expected to make their closing arguments tomorrow. The jury will likely begin deliberations Friday or Monday. In New York, Connor Hansen.
And like I said, he's innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. It is up to the judge and the jury. It's up to the jury to make a decision. But what I'm hearing as they're making their closing statements, they're making it seem like what was going on is normal. The substances is not normal. You have to get a hotel under a different name. You can't get a hotel under your name. Okay, he's famous, yeah. But you're allegedly also getting substances under a different name, and your employees have to, okay, you're doing street stuff and you're doing stuff that's prescribed. Where's the doctor that prescribed stuff to him? Real talk. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. It's not my decision. It's up to the jury. Let's continue.
It's in Fox News.
Connor, thanks so much. In the meantime here, let's talk about someone who has been guiding us through this trial each and every day through 34 witnesses over several weeks. It's, of course, Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst. Nima, good to see you here. It's getting close to the end, I would imagine. Let's talk, though. I want to get into the prosecution's closing arguments. How compelling will the jurors find the arguments being proffered by the prosecution?
I really like when this guy speaks. Like the video, you guys. We got about 110 in the building, and I got 3 likes. Please double tap the screen. From my analytics, I could tell that most people are watching from a tablet or a phone. So press 1 if you're watching from a phone. Please double tap the screen. Yes, let's get to it. Thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Let's get the likes up. Double tap the screen, please. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Let's go.
Prosecution in closing, do you think?
I thought they were very compelling, Andrew, and some arguments were better than others. And it's not what Assistant U.S. Attorney Christy Slavic said, but when she said it. And it's interesting that she started with racketeering, because we know that prostitution is in the bag. I mean, there's plenty of evidence of that. But if the government gets just a prostitution conviction and they lose on sex trafficking and racketeering, that's a tremendous loss for the Department of Justice. This will be the most expensive prostitution trial in the country. So racketeering is critically important, maybe the most important charge here, Andrew, because it's much more readily provable than sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is shaky at best, and I'm sure we're going to get into it. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Slavic started with racketeering, and she started with the most readily provable racketeering act, which is drug distribution, because you can get to racketeering through many different ways. But she started by talking about all the drugs that were seized when agents raided Combs's Los Angeles and Miami homes. And drug trafficking is, of course, a racketeering predicate act, but so is kidnapping. And she talked about the instances where Combs kidnapped Cassie Ventura and Capricorn Clark. He infamously had people take her to an office day after day after day and hook her up to a lie detector test. She was one of Combs's assistants. Then she talked about bribery, the $100,000 that was paid to the hotel security to get a copy of that infamous video that we've seen so many times. Then she moved on to arson. And then she started talking about some of the more challenging arguments, such as forced labor and sex trafficking, once she believed that she had shored up the racketeering count, which is so critical in this case.
So I think I've asked you this before going into the trial, just kind of the rationale for the RICO statutes there in New York. If you're a juror sitting there and listening, kind of grappling with the racketeering question, does it have to be a mixed bag or the whole thing? Do you have to get DIDDY on everything that amounts to racketeering, or one here and there, talking about kidnapping, arson, drug distribution, and the like? Does it have to be all-encompassing, or they maybe can pick one off the shelf for 2?
They can pick and choose. They have to unanimously agree. They just need 2 or more racketeering acts within a 10-year period. And something Slavic said today is she acknowledged the elephant in the room. Racketeering is typically used for the mob. The statute was passed in the early 70s. Then they started using it for street gangs, and I used it for drug cartels. You don't typically see racketeering in a sexual assault, sexual abuse case, but it's a very powerful statute, Andrew, and it's very broad. It can bring in a lot of people, a lot of evidence, and importantly, a lot of potential crimes into the case. So what am I talking about? It can bring in state charges. So things that aren't even federal charges at all, such as the kidnapping under California and New York law. It can bring in the arson. It can bring domestic violence, assault, things that are completely barred by the statute of limitations. We know, for instance, California, where I'm sitting in Los Angeles, is a 5-year statute of limitations on the domestic violence that we saw in 2016. So by bringing all that evidence in, you can have a pattern of racketeering involving these other crimes without having the mob, shaking someone down and execrating someone.
So, Nima, let's talk about the defense and what their strategy may be for closing arguments. And lest we forget, the defense rested their case extremely quickly in just not even, a matter of hours a couple of days ago here. So what will the tack they will take?
The defense is going to focus entirely on consent. And you're right, Andrew. It was a very short defense case. Really no witnesses. What the defense did was really two things. They put in more messages from Cassie and Jane to Combs and the sex workers, where Cassie and Jane, they were coordinating with the sex workers. They were paying them through Zelle and Cash App. I mean, Combs is a very smart individual.
Good
He
morning.
was committing sex trafficking. He was having his victims set it all up. That's going to be part and parcel of the defense's argument tomorrow. That these weren't victims at all. They were knowing and active participants. They enjoyed it. There's a reason the defense spent so much time playing the freak-off videos themselves. Of course, you and I don't know what is on those videos. Just the jurors saw them. But I'm speculating that a lot of the videos showed women who seemed to be enjoying themselves sexually. There was even some discussion of whether they were orgasming and whether those orgasms were fake or real or not. Because when it comes to the sex trafficking, what Combs reasonably thought is important. If he thought they were consenting, that is a defense in the case. He doesn't have the mens rea, or he doesn't have the guilty mind that's necessary for a conviction when it comes to sex trafficking. Now, of course, the prosecution tried to rebut all that today, and they went through different categories of control. Of course, they talked about physical violence. Yeah. They talked about Combs pushing drugs on the victims. They talked about the financial coercion, right? If you don't cooperate, I'm not going to pay your rent. They talked about the extortion, holding the videos of the sex tapes over their head, right? If you don't play ball, guess what? I'm going to send these sex tapes to your mom's employer. I'm going to send these sex tapes to the father of your child, for Cassie and Jane, respectively.
That in itself is crazy, that you're threatening to send it to Jane's baby father. You know what that means? That her child can be taken away from her. Saying that he's going to send information to Cassie's mom and asking for money from Cassie's mom. Cassie's mom gave him the money and then he gave it back. So there's proof of that. That's sad in itself. Why are you contacting parents? What you're doing, you should never even be wanting to do this with your girl. You shouldn't be wanting a man sleeping with your girl if you love her and not using protection. And then you're recording it and holding it over their head. And then you're contacting the parents saying that you're going to put it out, knowing that Cassie, main thing was having a career. And he was holding that over her head. And in regards to Jane, holding over the rent over her head. So concerning. And that's why he's in jail right now, because he has to try and prove his innocence. Some of the women were on substances too, y'all, which is sad. Don't be with no joker that's going to put you in a situation like this or put you on substances. Don't do it. I don't care how fine he is. I don't care how cute he is. Don't be with no joker that's putting you through nothing like this. It's unacceptable. Nobody will want this for their daughters. Mothers, teach your daughters different. Real talk. Real talk. And they say he's so charming. Be careful of that. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Like the video, like the video. We're at 23 likes, you guys. Let's get the likes to 100. I need 100 people to double tap that screen, please. And thank you. And subscribe. Thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
I have to ask this. Can you read the tea leaves at all about timing, the length of closing arguments? The prosecution went hours today. Like I said, though, the defense rested their...
Yes. I see that comment. I see that comment. And that's the other concerning part. There's probably no proof of who might not no longer be with us. Do y'all remember the video when he's sitting there getting his hair cut and he's got the laptop in his hand and he's talking, and then the DJ plays the music and he said, "Come on, DJ, what you doing?" Back in the day, man, you would have ended up, yeah, so concerning. His resurfaced video said a lot. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Pace in a matter of, what, an hour? Does that spell anything into how they will approach their closing arguments? Because prosecution, they'll get a rebuttal to them no matter what.
They will. Mark Ignifilo, who's obviously very high profile, well-known defense lawyer, his wife is representing Luigi Mangione, who we've talked about a lot. The fact that the defense spent so little time in their case in chief leads me to believe that they have reasonable doubt. And they have reasonable doubt for all three victims, according to the defense. And here's what they're going to say tomorrow. They have reasonable doubt for victim one, Cassie, because there are emails and text messages that exclusively show that she loved and was enjoying the freak-offs. I'm not saying I agree with it, but this is going to be the defense argument. Victim two to testify, who was Mia, she was actually a very small part of the prosecution's closing argument today. A lot of people think, and potentially some jurors think that because she gave very inconsistent statements to law enforcement, even when she initially met with prosecutors, she did not bring up the sexual assault. The defense went after her very aggressively with attorney Brian Steele, who of course represented Young Thug in that case, in the YSL case in Atlanta. I think the prosecution is concerned about her credibility, and they didn't spend a lot of time on it. The last victim, who was Jane, the most recent victim, she does have some emails and messages where she tells Combs that she doesn't want to participate in the hotel nights. The problem with her, though, was she ultimately seems to consent, and then she asks Combs for money for rent. He's still paying her rent, asks money for clothes, asks for jewelry and bags. So I think the defense is going to paint that as a transactional relationship, and I think that's the direction that Mark Ignifilo is going to go in tomorrow with respect to each of the 3 victims.
You know, Nima, you and I always discuss kind of the ends of these trials, and I can't really remember whether or not you like to make predictions or not about how a jury will come down, what the verdict may be. So we'll save that.
So note in the comments, what do you think the verdict will be? Monday, Tuesday is going to be very important time frame for the jury. Let's continue fair use reaction clip. Let's continue hit the likes, you guys. Let's get the likes to 100. Please double tap the screen. If you're watching from a phone, press 1, or a tablet, press 1. Please double tap the screen. Let's continue fair use reaction clip
For next week, but I just want to ask, will we get a verdict next week, do you think? You know, trying to get into the jurors' mind about how long they're going to grapple with these questions, you know, on the charges themselves. They ought to be unanimous here. Do you think they'll have a speedy verdict? Or?
Yes, he was still paying her rent, and he was locked up. I think they said he was paying the rent. I'm not certain if he was helping with her attorney, but definitely still paying the rent. I was shocked about that. She was allegedly still dating him around the time he got arrested. So she's hoping that he gets out. I don't know if they're going to rekindle things, but she was still around when he got locked up. So they had said the hotel allegedly, I think they were stating, and take this with a grain of salt, I think they were saying his hotel was set up for an FO. So he hadn't stopped after the Cassie situation. They had said he just reduced from going to hotels. And it was either at some of his girls' houses or sometimes at his cribs or something like that. But yeah, he was still paying her rent. I was shocked about that. Yeah, that in itself, it's like y'all still, and you know what I did not catch though, and I don't know if you guys caught that. The woman that he was still paying her rent, I don't think she went to go visit him. I think she kept her distance, even though he was paying the rent. I think she kept her distance because of this trial. Yeah, so it amazes me. So I'm wondering, since she hit the stand, did he ask his accountants to still pay her rent? That's what we're gonna find out probably after. Let's continue fair use reaction clip, but still paying her rent? That's a trip.
A long one.
Fair use reaction
I think
clip.
this will be a long one. And Andrew, I like to make predictions. This is a trial that is going to be very difficult to predict, but I'm happy to give my prediction. I'll do it now. This is my prediction in the case. I think prostitution is a gimme. It's a layup. But again, I think the defense is going to concede that. I think the jurors will return a guilty verdict on the racketeering if they follow the instructions and they get there from drug trafficking, or they get there from bribery or kidnapping or extortion. I think sex trafficking is weak. I believe that these women were sex trafficked, Andrew. But to get 12 out of 12 jurors to buy that, I think it's either going to be a not guilty or a hung on that count. Because the jurors are going to ask themselves this question: why did the victims stay with their abuser for so many years if they were abused? This is an argument the defense raised recently in the Harvey Weinstein case with some success recently there in New York. The prosecution only got 1 out of the 3 victims guilty verdicts. So I think that's where ultimately the jurors will end up. And in terms of timing, obviously we know we're coming up against the 4th of July holiday. Right. So deliberation is going to start on Monday. I don't think we'll get a verdict on Monday. Tuesday would be the earliest, but Wednesday would probably be my guess. And if we get past Thursday, we're looking at a hung jury and a mistrial on at least some of the counts, because never underestimate the motivation for jurors who are ordinary people who have spent 2 months of their life hearing this testimony, watching these explicit videos, wanting to get back to their family.
Yeah, and wanting to celebrate the 4th of July holiday.
Yeah, wanting to get back to their families. I don't blame them. Let me know in the comments, do you think that we're going to get a verdict of guilty or not guilty? Okay, I can go back to this one.
The count
Fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in, and thank you. The other one I had to stop playing because I wasn't past the 10 minutes. They were stating that some of the girls, his daughters, had came to court.
Captivated much of the world.
The case against Sean Combs has been heart-wrenching.
For witnesses taking the stand in over 1,000 exhibits.
We saw a different side of Sean Combs. Not the mogul or the rapper or the industry leader, but someone who had very disturbing tendencies towards women and the people around him.
Combs is charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty. Combs' family and friends by his side in the courtroom today, including several of his children, his mother and longtime confidants, standing by the disgraced media mogul as the case nears its end.
The courtroom was packed for the closing argument by the prosecutor. For the first time since the beginning of the trial, all 6 of Sean Combs' children were there. His mother, at one point, he gestured to the family row, urging them to squeeze together to make room. And when Sean Combs entered court, he put a hand over his heart, a gesture of love and affection towards his family.
Combs recently exercised his right not to testify in his own defense, telling the judge, "That is my decision with my lawyers."
He seems very calm, relaxed, in his powder blue sweater and button-down shirt underneath.
Today, the prosecution spent nearly 5 hours trying to convince a jury of 8 men and 4 women, ranging in ages from 30 to 74, that one of hip-hop's most acclaimed figures coerced women into drug-fueled sexual marathons with male escorts known as freak-offs.
The prosecutor asked the jury to imagine being a woman in this situation who was forced to have sex for hours in uncomfortable positions while they might have a urinary tract infection. This was painful and
yeah, that in itself. They were having medical issues and he didn't care, y'all. Fair use reaction clip. They were having medical issues and he didn't care. Women are having their time of the month. He didn't care. Where they do that at? Not having protection, just sleeping with strangers. And think about this. Think about the bigger picture. If a person is in that industry and sleeping around, not just with them, sleeping around with other people, who's to say that they're not bringing you something back to you? Okay, maybe they got a clear doctor report that Monday, but they slept with a person Tuesday, Wednesday, and they came to y'all Friday. That medical record that was clear Monday might not be clear anymore because they slept with more people Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Not protecting these women from stuff. I have to be careful. It's some dirty work. Dirty work. That in itself should be a concern and illegal. You did not protect their health. You didn't protect their health from diseases. Fair use reaction clip.
prosecutor said it was unwanted.
In their final push, prosecutors aim to show Combs orchestrated travel across state lines, presenting flight records and invoices as evidence that Combs coordinated cross-state travel for sex workers, aiming to prove he was running a criminal enterprise. Diddy's defense arguing the sexual encounters were consensual and...
Facts. Not only physically, but spiritually. You can't let everybody insert. You don't know what they bring into you. You got to be careful with your body, your mind, body, soul, and spirit. You got to be careful with that. But see, he didn't care. So women, teach your daughters to make sure the guy is protected, clean, and just be like, be upfront with me. You want to cheat? Let me go. You want to be out there sleeping around? Let me go. Protect me. You got to tell these women, protect me, baby girl. You want to go out there and sleep with other dudes? Just let me know. You go do you. I'm going to do me, and I'm going to be over here safe. You know, you got to be upfront with your partners. Real talk, men and women. But it's like him allowing these men to insert he didn't love these women. You allowed another man to insert and not protect the women. And then it's hours and hours and hours. Where they do that at? Sometimes people are like, okay, 30 minutes, get off me. Go get me a sandwich. Go get me a towel, clean me up. Hours and hours and hours. Hours? Days? Baby, stop playing. Let's continue. Fair use, reaction clip.
Not coerced, saying the rapper lived a swinger lifestyle. Combs' defense attorney, Tinny Garrigo, said in her opening statement that may not be what you like to do in your bedroom, but you're not here to judge him for his sexual preferences. She later added, being a willing participant in your own sex life is not sex trafficking. As part of the prosecution's exhibits, the jury heard a voice memo from Combs to an ex-girlfriend and one of the women accusing him of sex trafficking, who testified under the...
And then let me ask y'all this. He asked the men to release. Okay, I'll be general. But isn't it interesting? He rarely wanted to see his women with another woman. He wanted to see his women with another man, and then they were playing the juices. Let's continue. Why was it never woman on woman? Why was it men with his woman? Sometimes men get excited about woman on woman, but he wanted the men to release, and he'd be mad if they didn't release. What? He'd get mad if they didn't release so he could play in it. That's some dirty work. I'm being general as possible, y'all. Fair use reaction clip. There's about 362 in the building. If all 300 can please subscribe, we're trying to hit 39K. If all 362 can subscribe, we're trying to hit 39K this month. Thank you. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Like the video. Let's continue. Fair use.
Jane. Prosecutors say the message exhibits Combs allegedly pressuring her into sex by threatening to withhold financial support.
I ain't trying to go back and forth with no woman. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, I ain't got no time for me and you can be mad, I can have a spat, we can have whatever. Then after that, you better get on your job.
The prosecution also calling Combs the leader of a criminal enterprise. He doesn't take no for an answer. The defendant used power, violence, and fear to get what he wanted, adding, "It's his kingdom. Everyone was there to serve him."
In its closing argument, the prosecution was able to focus the jury on what they say is the strong evidence that Sean Combs sex trafficked women, and it was a devastating portrait.
Over the weeks, the jury heard from former employees, insiders from the music industry, and close associates. The high-profile trial also drew major star power, Kanye West making a brief courthouse appearance, and big names like Usher and Michael B. Jordan.
Okay, so if y'all did not know, last night I posted that Kanye West is trying to work with King Combs on releasing some music. Go check out that short. I posted a short this morning. Go check that out. Kanye's trying to work with King Combs on releasing music. Fair use reaction clip.
Mentioned throughout testimony. Kid Cudi even took the stand to testify. Diddy was once at the pinnacle of the music industry and pop culture. But cracks in Combs' glamorous mogul persona began when his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura filed a civil lawsuit against him in 2023, which was settled the next day for $20 million without admitting wrongdoing. Then, 6 months later, this graphic abusive video from a hotel surveillance camera, footage that would later be used as evidence in court. Though Combs first denied all wrongdoing, after CNN released the video, he put out a statement on social media.
I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable.
But for Combs, that was just the beginning. The details of that civil lawsuit and that abusive video leading to the federal investigation, his arrest, and now his ongoing trial. Over 4 emotional days of testimony, Cassie described in detail the alleged abuse, including physical assaults, threats, and instances of alleged forced sex. She testified Combs referred to.
And then you have to realize Cassie tried to leave. We saw what happened when she tried to leave. We saw what happened. How many other times did we not see her trying to leave? There's not a lot of conversations of Cassie trying to put her hands on him, but she made unwelcoming comments to a man that allegedly had a video that Cassie didn't want released. But we rarely hear that Cassie put her hands on him. But we saw what happened when she tried to leave. Fair use reaction clip.
As free calls.
Cassie is the heart and the essence of this trial. Without her or the Intercontinental video, there might not be a case here. Her testimony was powerful. It truly showed the elements of sex trafficking. It showed also some of the repercussions of what happens when an individual is allegedly trafficked.
Cassie testified how Combs initially proposed encounters that he called voyeurism. He would watch me have intercourse and sexual activity with a third party, specifically another man, all within the first year of their relationship. Cassie testifies she continued to participate in free calls. I knew it wasn't something I wanted to be doing, but I was in love and wanting to make him happy. I didn't feel like I had much of a choice. Didn't really know what no could turn into. Cassie said their free calls became so frequent they became weekly events. In their cross-examination, defense attorneys tried to portray Cassie as a willing participant in a consensual relationship, presenting text messages that seemingly showed Cassie at times initiating the free calls. At one point texting, "Freak off with the girl?" Combs responding, "What makes you want to do that?"
Didn't I just say that? Didn't I just say that? And he said, what would make you want to do that? Let's go back, baby. Didn't I just say it's interesting that it wasn't Cassie and a girl? And he said, well, what would make you want to do that? He wanted those guys to release. so he can play in it. That's some dirty work. And I mean dirty work. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
At one point texting, "Freak off with the girl?" Combs responding, "What makes you want to do that?" But it was another witness, an ex-girlfriend under the pseudonym Jane, who tearfully described her tumultuous 3-year relationship with Combs, which began in 2021 and ended when he got arrested in 2024. Jane testified she also experienced similar sexual demands that Cassie Ventura testified to. Days-long hotel nights with male sex workers, fueled by drugs and baby oil while Combs watched.
Her testimony has really struck a chord. Not just her testimony standalone.
And like I said, he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. There's about 262 in the building. If I can please get those 262 to please subscribe. We're trying to hit 39K this month. Please subscribe. We're trying to hit 39K. Continue to hit the like. We're trying to hit 39K. All 262 subscribe. We're almost there. Fair use reaction clip. Nancy Grace is about to speak out. Let's listen. Fair use reaction clip.
Alone, her testimony buttresses, corroborates everything Cassie Ventura said. These women, they were beaten, they were threatened.
Along with Cassie, Jane is another alleged victim here, and her testimony doesn't just carry the allegation of sex trafficking, it also carries the allegation of transportation to engage in prostitution. I think the connection and also the similarities between the two show to the jury that potentially this is not a mistake. This is a scheme or a course of conduct, and I use those words because that's how you describe a RICO.
In closing arguments, the prosecution showed a text message thread between Jane and Combs' former chief of staff, Christina Cora. Jane claims...
No, Jane is allegedly not J-Lo. Let's make that very clear. We don't know who Mia is, and we don't know who Jane is. If the courts have stated they wanted them to be anonymous, they're anonymous in my eyes. Fair use reaction clip. Let's continue. We don't know who Mia is. We don't know who Jane is. Some people are making assumptions, but over here, we don't know, and we did not want people to put it in the chat. But I'm answering your question. Fair use reaction clip. If you already subscribed, thank you. If you already hit the like, thank you. If you didn't hit the like, please hit the like. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Combs threatened her if she did not participate in hotel nights. Jane writing, "He just threatened me about my sex tapes that he has of me. He said that he would expose me and send them to my baby daddy. Tomorrow, the defense makes their final case to the jury."
The defense called no witnesses, relying only on cross-examination, and expect the defense to argue that the women federal prosecutors said were trafficked were not victims, but long-term girlfriends who were in relationships with Sean Combs because they loved him and because they were willing.
Oh, I got money, baby. I don't know who you playing with. I have other businesses. This ain't what I do. I don't do this all day, every day. Go find yourself a job. Go on your page. Be kind in the comments. It's Friday. It's a good day. Be kind in the comments. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
To participate in his polyamorous lifestyle.
The government's case was very compelling. During closing argument,
Good morning.
Slavic stood just feet away from the jury.
Good morning.
Closing argument. And at times, they seemed very entranced with what she was saying, taking notes. But other times, the jury seemed to look away, uninterested in what she was saying, or somewhat skeptical in the way that she defined or articulated how facts came into this case. That may be the opening for the defense to raise reasonable doubt in how they present their facts tomorrow.
A lot going on, baby. Good morning, everyone. A lot going on. Real talk. A lot of people got on that stand and they told how they felt about what they experienced. And if people see that, okay. But if you heard that your employer, okay, was doing what he's doing, you would question. There's rules and regulations of being a business. Why are people acting like there isn't? There's rules and regulation of being a corporation. Fair use reaction clip.
Was so packed there wasn't. And we begin with closing arguments in the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial.
The prosecution focused its closing statement on the drug-fueled sexual encounters, telling jurors Combs was the leader of a criminal enterprise and created a climate of fear, and his manipulation of his girlfriends was about control.
And next, the defense gets its turn. Eyewitness News reporter Kimberly Richardson was in the courtroom and is live in Lower Manhattan. Kimberly?
Well, Sade, today the courtroom was so packed, there wasn't enough room for everyone in Sean Combs' camp, his family, his many supporters and friends. At one point, his twin daughters passed notes to his attorney. Their dad turned, waved, and asked how they've been. This is the beginning of the final chapter in a case that exposed some of the most intimate and explicit moments of Combs' life. The prosecution closing arguments today in federal court. Jurors heard a voice message from Sean Combs to an ex-girlfriend who testified under the name Jane about setting up what she called hotel nights, drug-fueled sex sessions with paid male escorts. Prosecutors maintain the message as evidence that Combs trafficked Jane, who wanted no part of the so-called freak-offs, but feared violent reactions from Combs if she said no.
Where my life is at right now, I don't have no time for no games, baby girl. Me and you can be mad, I can have a spat, we can have whatever, then after that you better get on your job. That's really, that's all it is.
Prosecutor Christy Slavic described Combs as a man who would not take no for an answer, used power, violence, and fear to get what he wanted. She explained the 55-year-old was head of a criminal organization she called, quote, Combs Enterprise, saying the disgraced mogul used a small army of employees to cater to his every whim, calling them foot soldiers, loyal lieutenants. Slavic methodically walked jurors.
Foot soldiers, loyal lieutenants. Please subscribe to the page. I'm bringing y'all TTT. Fair use. Please subscribe to the page. It's about 229 in the building. If I can get all 229 to subscribe. If you already subscribed, thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Through the charges, racketeering, 2 counts of sex trafficking, allegedly Cassie Ventura and Jane, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. January 2009, Slavic says Combs kidnapped Ventura, a component of count 1. After allegedly beating her inside an SUV, leaving her face bruised and bloodied, Combs kept her hidden in a hotel for a week while her injuries healed. His security team was right there. Jane,
that in itself is concerning. If she's locked in a hotel, she can't leave. She's locked in the hotel until her bruises heal. She can't leave. Fair use reaction clip. Didn't send her to emergency. And allegedly, if there was a doctor sent, the doctor was sent to the hotel. Fair use reaction clip.
Prosecutors say what started as domestic violence turned into sex trafficking. Count 4. Slavic told jurors after viciously beating Jane, forcing her to perform oral sex on a paid escort, he asked her, quote, is this coercion? At that point, Slavic says Combs knew the feds were investigating him. The father of 7 has all along maintained his innocence, insisting any and all sexual encounters were consensual.
It's all good, get your rest. You are the crack pipe. That's my new name for you, crack pipe.
Now, the prosecution has wrapped after roughly 5 hours of closing arguments. The defense is up tomorrow, first thing in the morning. The jury could begin deliberating as early as Friday. For now, we're live in Lower Manhattan.
So we'll see, definitely. We'll see what's going to happen in regards to Monday and Tuesday and what the jury's going to come back with. And if they need more time on Wednesday, they want to enjoy the holiday. You know what I mean? Fair use reaction clip. So much going on in regards to this case. And then allegedly the daughters are listening to some of this. And like they just said, some of the lawyers passed notes asking the daughters how they're doing. They got to hear what their dad was like. Interesting. Okay, let's get to it. Fair use reaction clip. I'm surprised the mothers are letting those daughters get in that courtroom.
There's a lot of testimony. And closings are the last time the jurors will hear from the attorneys before they begin their deliberations. So we begin with the prosecution's closing argument that was delivered by Assistant United States Attorney Christy Slavic, outlining why the jury should find Combs guilty of 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, 1 with respect to Cassie Ventura Fine, 1 with respect to Jane, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Again, 1 with respect to Cassie, 1 with respect to Jane. I want to bring on right now Long Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was inside that courtroom for all of those arguments today. Elizabeth, great to see you. Want to take this piece by piece. Let's start it off with racketeering conspiracy. The top charge, arguably the most complicated charge in the mix, carries life in prison, okay?
Yes, that's what he called them. Yes. And I remember seeing that on Instagram. The wording, the conversation, get on your job, get your rest, get your bag. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Don't forget to subscribe, you guys. We're trying to hit 39K. Please subscribe. Please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 39K. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
So there's a lot at stake here. The prosecutor definitely wanted to make it clear for the jury. How did she outline? Let's start this. How did she outline that this is a criminal organization, that there was a criminal agreement? Let's start there before we even move into the underlying predicate crimes that the prosecution needs to prove.
Yeah, so right off the bat, Christy Slavic is really talking about count one, of course, that being racketeering conspiracy, aka RICO. And just right off the bat, she's telling the jury, over the last several weeks, you learned about Sean Combs and then kidnapping an employee, forced labor, arson, bribery, plus brutal crimes are at the heart of the case. She also said, across all of these comes the defendant using his power and violence to get what he wants, and that he doesn't take no for an answer. And so right off at the top of her closing argument, the jury has shown exhibit photos, one of March 2016 Intercontinental Hotel still image from that surveillance video where you can kind of see Cassie on the ground after she was initially physically assaulted by Sean Combs on that videotape. And then also the government talked about Sean Combs kicking, choking, and slapping Jane and forcing her into a freak-off, specifically pointing to the instance that happened in June of 2024. And so, the government was like, these instances are separated by 8 years, but they're kind of saying they're one and the same. But I think the most interesting part of just the beginning of the closing argument by the prosecution is that Christy Slavic is like, Sean Combs has a small army of personal staff. No one could stop him. He uses inner circle and money to cover up his crimes, and even referred to his assistants as foot soldiers and other things like that. So really kind of pointing out how the assistants, how those who were in Sean Combs' inner circle really kind of helped build this case of racketeering conspiracy against the defendant.
Yeah, that he's the leader of this criminal organization, that the assistants, the security, they helped pull off the freak-offs. They knew it was wrong. They were close to people. They knew about the sex tapes. They got drugs for freak-offs. Christina Forum, she knew what was going on. D-Rock got ice for Cassie's black eye. So I get it, right? This idea that everybody was on the same page. Now, for the prosecution to win this charge, they have to prove at least two underlying predicate crimes, right? And you tell me what stood out the most. Was it forced labor? Was it kidnapping? Was it arson? Which, by the way, there was a whole back and forth yesterday. Oh, is arson and kidnapping still part of the case? Yes, it is. They might have decided to not move forward with attempted arson or attempted kidnapping, but they're still moving forward with actual kidnapping and arson, conspiracy to commit these crimes. So which of the underlying crimes really stood out to you today? I know the prosecution addressed all of them, but was it forced labor? Was it the drug offenses? Was it arson? Was it kidnapping? Was it bribery? Which were the ones that you think if the jury has to decide, oh, these are the two we're going to find them guilty of, or we think these are the predicate crimes for racketeering, this pattern of criminal activity, which were some of the ones that stood out to you?
Well, to your point, Jesse, the prosecution laying out again that the government only has to prove two of these acts, but as they're listing drug distribution, kidnapping, arson, bribery, sex trafficking, forced labor, witness tampering, interstate transportation for prostitution, you really could pick any of them, because I feel like the government made very strong cases for all of them. But some of the ones that really kind of stood out to me, and I think for maybe a different way than maybe people think, it was kind of drug distribution, because I think a lot of people, in terms of just the drugs and overall kind of components that go to it, that people think, Sean Combs had to be transporting, kilos and large quantities of drugs, but really the government was kind of laying out that delivering or passing on drugs kind of count as distribution. And so I think Christy Slavic made a pretty strong argument where she said special ingredients that, talking about the drugs, were required for freak-offs. So each and every time she's kind of talking about the predicate act, she's talking about all the players involved. So in terms of drug distribution, she specifically talked about D-Rock, KK, and Fahim Muhammad. And so the two elements that kind of go with that is that the co-conspirators distributed the drugs, but also the second element being that the co-conspirator distributed the drugs knowingly. And so she listed all the drugs out, because drugs was something that was very common throughout all the testimony that the witnesses had. So she talked about cocaine, meth, ketamine, Xanax, MDMA, GHB, 2C, and mushrooms as well. And so she said that the quantity is not relevant. It's not an element of this crime. And so she says, the jury has heard a number of names, including Guido, One Stop, Baby Girl, as some of the drug dealers that were used, but also just the money that kind of goes and is attached to just, the assistants reaching out to KK or Fahim Muhammad, talking about reimbursement for payments such as $450 of a balance for drugs, or $780 to go towards the personal Gucci items. And as they talked about throughout a lot of witness testimony, the Gucci items normally refer to the drugs that were in a specific Gucci bag that Sean Combs always.
I think everyone.
Fair use reaction clip is so concerning. Think about it. Allegedly, one of the assistants had to take a substance because he said, I need you to check it first. What? A boss wants you to check something before you try it? I'm not taking no substance for no boss. Fair use reaction clip.
Gucci bag that Sean Combs always had on his person, or that the assistants were required to carry just near and around Sean Combs. But even in terms of just distributing the drugs to others, the prosecution named a number of people that it kind of falls under there, where it's including Cassie and Jane and Carrie Moore. how Mia and Brendan Paul specifically were even made to kind of partake in this drug use. Mia testified that she kind of was given a different batch of all these different drugs, and it was kind of like a guessing game of which drug was which drug, and she had to take a line of it. Whereas Brendan Paul talked about the first time he did drugs outside of marijuana was juicy with Sean Combs in order to kind of prove his loyalty. But I think another big thing, Jeff.
See, the employee had to prove his loyalty to his boss. I just said that. Fair use reaction clip.
Was just the kidnapping aspect, because to your point, a lot of people are like, oh my God, there's no more kidnapping, oh my God, there's no more arson. But the prosecution laid out 3 instances of kidnapping. One in January of 2009 when Cassie's face was stomped on and she was held at a hotel because Sean Combs got upset that she was talking to a producer, and Cassie drunkenly punched Sean Combs in the face, and then he physically assaulted her, and that Sean Combs forced her to stay in a hotel for a week, and that Bonds, the security guard, told her that she couldn't leave that hotel. And so the prosecution was like, Cassie didn't consent to staying at the London hotel during this particular alleged incident of kidnapping. And there was another time where they brought it back to 2004 here in New York City with Capricorn Clark and the lie detector test after the jewelry went missing, and how the government said a person restricted victims' movements by confining her to a place. And so the prosecution laid out that the man who had...
Remember when that girl had to do the lie detector test? And she had to do it for days and days and days. They would let her go home, and then she'd have to go back to the warehouse or wherever, take it with a grain of salt. She'd have to go back to do this lie detector test for days. So she was restricted. She couldn't go back to her regular job. She was doing lie detector tests. The mindset of, let's continue, fair use reaction clip.
Administered the test, that if she refused, she would be thrown into East River. That was something that Capricorn Clark had even testified to. And then obviously the biggest instance was December of 2011 with the whole kid cut.
Let me go back a little bit. Did y'all hear what was said if she didn't do the lie detector test?
To the drugs that were in a specific Gucci bag that Sean Combs always had on his person, or that the assistants were required to carry just near and around Sean Combs. But even in terms of just distributing the drugs to others, the prosecution named a number of people that it kind of falls under there, where it's included Cassie and Jane and Carrie Morgan and Vanna and Mia, and how Mia and Brendan Paul specifically were even made to kind of partake in this drug use. Mia testified that she kind of was given a different batch of all these different drugs, and it was kind of like a guessing game of which drug was which drug, and she had to take a line of it. Whereas Brendan Paul talked about the first time he did drugs outside of marijuana was juicy with Sean Combs in order to kind of prove his loyalty. But I think another big thing, Jesse, was just the kidnapping aspect, because to your point, a lot of people are like, oh my God, there's no more kidnapping, oh my God, there's no more arson. But the prosecution laid out 3 instances of kidnapping. One in January of 2009 when Cassie's face was stomped on and she was held at a hotel because Sean Combs got upset that she was talking to a producer, and Cassie drunkenly punched Sean Combs in the face, and then he physically assaulted her, and that Sean Combs forced her to stay in a hotel for a week, and that Bonds, the security guard, told her that she couldn't leave that hotel. And so the prosecution was like, Cassie didn't consent to staying at the London hotel during this particular alleged incident of kidnapping. And there was another time where they brought it back to 2004 here in New York City with Capricorn Clark and the lie detector test after the jewelry went missing, and how the government said a person restricted victims' movements by confining her to a place. And so the prosecution laid out that the man who administered the test said if she refused, she would be thrown into East River. That was something that Capricorn Clark had even testified to. And then obviously the biggest instance was December of 2011 with the whole Kid Cudi kind of aspect, where Capricorn Clark says that a gun was pointed at her face by Sean Combs. She was forced into this car and was driven over to Kid Cudi's home, all because Sean Combs was upset that he being Kid Cudi was seeing something terrifying. But that Capricorn had even testified again that Sean Combs held a gun at her. She didn't want to go with him, and that all the players involved with that particular instance of alleged kidnapping was Capricorn Clark. Rue was a security guard, Sean Combs, how they drove over to Kid Cudi's home, and Capricorn Clark didn't consent. Now, obviously, Jesse, there's a number of other interesting points where you talk about bribery and other things too that are very interesting, but those to me are the ones that definitely stood out the most.
Yeah, bribery. Eddie Garcia, the hotel security guard who was allegedly paid $100,000 that he split with others to hand over the videotape of Cat.
Is your child struggling
Fair
with
use reaction clips. So many concerning things with the girlfriends and the assistants. So many concerning things.
$100,000 that he split with others to hand over the videotape of Sean Combs reportedly beating Cassie. I thought that was a significant point. Forced labor, the idea of Mia, his personal assistant, being allegedly sexually assaulted by Sean Combs, but also the idea of the 2 main alleged victims in this case, Jane and Cassie, they were forced to perform sex acts, right? This forced labor concept. So let's talk about Jane and let's talk about Cassie. Let's take it piece by piece. They each make up, as I said, individual sex trafficking counts and individual counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. But when we talk about sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, let's talk about Jane. What did the prosecutor say today in closing arguments to say that Jane is a victim of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. What did she say about that?
Well, I think, Jesse, the sex trafficking aspect as it specifically pertains to Jane is pretty interesting because the government to find one instance of sex trafficking. So sure, the government has a very long list of all these different flights and locations and hotel rooms, all to kind of point out that all of these instances of hotel nights were possibly alleged sex trafficking, but only the jury has to find one particular instance, and then the defendant, you know, in the perfect way the government probably wants, is guilty of sex trafficking. But as it comes to Jane, and by the way, whenever they were talking about Jane, the gallery screen that we're able to...
Let me say this, because some of y'all might have missed it yesterday. They talked about yesterday, the news, talked about other situationships in the college situation, the club situation. So they brought up other things that he got into. That was brought up yesterday. So there's different things that's being said about the woman that's in the picture here, but she dated him. And there was a situationship where there was a mugshot of him and her. So we talked about this situation in regards to situations he had 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So let's continue fair use reaction clip. So there's a lot that's happened in his life and women that's been in his life. Now we're wondering where's Gina? You know, why isn't Young Miami a part of this? You know what I mean? But it's all good. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. He's innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. I'm not a juror, but we'll see what the jury decides. Whether that'll be Monday, Tuesday, we'll see. Fair use reaction clip.
That kind of shows the public and the media and everyone who's sitting inside the courtroom. That was completely shut off. So only the jury is seeing these particular exhibits, the text messages, the photos, as it pertains to Jane, mainly because, you know, Jane, she testified under a pseudonym and they just want to protect her privacy just a little bit more. But in terms of just the different stages of sex trafficking, the government said that the first stage was Jane kind of learning about the drugs and the outfits and putting pornography on, because they were saying that Sean Combs kind of groomed Jane into sex trafficking. So they say that first stage, again, being the drugs, the outfits, putting pornography on, something that kind of Diddy enjoyed according to her testimony. But she said the second stage was the fantasy talk, and how the fantasy talk kind of pertained to Jane with other men, and that Sean Combs made it happen.
I'm obsessed with this.
Fair use reaction clip. Fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here.
Using a payment of rent, because as we know, Sean Combs was paying for her rent $10,000.
Yes, you guys, let's get the likes to 100. Please double tap the screen. If you're watching from a phone, press 1. If you're watching from a phone, press 1. Please double tap the screen. Let's get the likes to 100. And don't forget to subscribe, you guys. If I can get 120 people to please subscribe. If you already subscribed, thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Month, which we learned during the trial that he's still paying for even at this time, but that payment of rent was used as leverage. And so Christy Slavic is like, he reminds her he can take things away from her anytime that he wants to. And so the government said that the hotel nights weren't about what Jane wanted, it was about what the defendant wanted. He made Jane sex with the entertainers because, as the defense kind of pointed out, using Jane's messages kind of in a way against her, we're saying, okay, hey, look, she's reaching out to these escorts or these entertainers all on her own. But the government is saying that Sean Combs made Jane kind of sex with these entertainers, and that Jane wanted the escorts to wear condoms. However, Sean Combs didn't want them to wear condoms, and that he would be dismissive and condescending whenever she kind of was vocal about wanting these escorts to wear protection. The government also saying throughout those months, the defendant continued to dangle different carrots in her face, such as gifts, such as trips, such as shopping. And then we heard an audio message from Sean Combs to Jane where he says, you know, I'm not going to play these games with you. You'll just have silence. We can have spats, but you need to get on your job. And the government's kind of pointing out that get on your job was her doing these hotel nights. But in terms of Jane kind of voicing her opinion about not wanting to do the hotel nights, because if you go back to her testimony at the beginning, she thought initially that it was going to be a one-time thing, that at first it was exciting and taboo and she just wanted to pretty much please her partner. But then towards the end, she was kind of voicing that she felt like these hotel nights were all that she was used for, and that she said she was saying these things about voicing her opinions, that she was saying it for months even prior to Cassie's lawsuit, where the jury was able to see some messages from Jane to Sean Combs where she says, I feel like I'm reading my own sexual trauma. On 2 of my birthdays, you forced me to perform with with entertainers. Then the jury was able to hear, you know, these audio recordings, some that we've already heard before, where Jane is saying, you know, I want you to...
Let's be very clear. Some of these rich men are allegedly making bad decisions because they think they can get away with a lot. You got to realize in the comments, you guys, some people have broke the law, so they want to stand up for people that allegedly that are breaking the law. What employer do you know? What employer do you know? There's HR rules. There's union rules. You should not be sleeping with your employee and asking them to take substances or actually asking them to engage in X without protection. There's so many concerns here. She's in a hotel healing from her bruises. What? A girl is away from her job, asked to take a lie detector test. If she doesn't take the test, they're going to throw her somewhere. So let's be very clear. So concerning. A lot of us have jobs. We don't look at our boss and thinking he's going to ask us to take substances. We don't look at our boss and thinking he's sleeping with all the employees and they're having unprotected. What? Let's be very clear. There's concerns here. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just giving my opinion that there's concerns here. Look at it as a bigger picture. He's a corporation. He asked a gentleman to take something to test it. Your boss can't ask you to take a substance. What? Many of us have jobs. Our bosses cannot ask us to take a substance, period. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Like the video, like the video. Don't forget to subscribe, you guys. Continue to hit the like button. If you're watching from a phone, press 1. If you're watching from a phone, press 1. Please hit the like button. Let's get the likes up. Double tap that screen, y'all. Double tap that screen. Yeah. If you have a business, you have to meet the guidelines. You can't be breaking the law. Fair use reaction clip. Let's continue.
No, and then Sean Combs kind of cuts her off and he says, "Are you recording me? What are you talking about?" Kind of showing these different instances where it turns out she was being recorded, but that Sean Combs in a way was kind of playing it like, oh, maybe he's manipulating her because he's implying that she's recording him when truly she was the one that was being recorded on. And so then they kind of talked about after Cassie's lawsuit where Jane's relationship with Sean Combs changed. She stopped seeing him for months, but the government points out that Sean Combs told Jane to charge him. They kind of implied that it was to buy her silence because Jane had asked for about $100,000 per year that they were together for her loss of money and her time, plus what she had to endure for these hotel nights, and kind of pointing out that charging was significantly less than what Cassie ended up getting in her settlement with Sean Combs after she filed her lawsuit. But in terms of just threats that were made too, the government pointed out that Sean Combs threatened to release her sex tapes to her child's father, and that the government says that Jane reached out to Christina Quorum about the threats, and that she again didn't speak with him for about 2 months after he had threatened to release these sexually explicit videos and photos of her to her child's father, and that they ended up reconnecting around her birthday, which is in February of 2024, because...
And that's real shady. You recorded her and then you're threatening. You're threatening her to say, I'm going to release this tape to your baby daddy. What does that mean? The child will be taken away from that mother. That's some dirty work. So he almost held these tapes over these women's heads. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Sean Combs says that they would spend wholesome time together. Lo and behold, that an escort was being contacted by Sean Combs so that way they could do another hotel night. So those were just some of the instances of sex trafficking by Jane. But in terms of just all these different instances of specific sex trafficking, they point to the sobriety party of October of 2023, where Jane wanted to do a hotel night without drugs, and then she ended up throwing up in between escort number 2 and escort number 3. They also point to the June 18th, 2024.
Escort number 2 and 3, he's got these women sleeping with 1 to 2 to 3 men in a night. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Incident that happened at Jane's house where she was physically assaulted, and then at the end of it, when she said she was forced to do a hotel night even after being assaulted, Sean Combs said something to her saying, "Is this coercion?" And I think the government was really kind of pointing out that coercion was the specific word that Sean Combs used, and so those were just some of the instances of alleged sex trafficking as it pertains to Jane.
Yeah. And that goes to knowledge. That goes to the knowledge component. The defense is going to say, how is he supposed to know they didn't really want this? Well, if the jury believes that he said that to her, that's significant. And I have to tell you, I think the highlight from this day was the prosecution saying that consenting once or consenting several times doesn't mean that either a Jane or a Cassie consented every time. One instance of sex trafficking, you laid them out so perfectly, the jury has to believe just one of them if it fits the elements of sex trafficking.
Yes, call the cops. Yes, go to the emergency room, get a kit done. Sometimes when Cassie had injuries, he wouldn't allow her to go to emergency to get treatment because there would be proof of it. There would be a trace of it. There would be a trail of it. One time, allegedly, they're getting things to recover. I'll say it that way. I'm so cautious of what I say because I love that green symbol. I love that green symbol. Yeah. So it's very interesting in regards to their relationship, the dynamic of the relationship. So if there are other people that's doing similar things than this, they're gonna slow it down because they don't want to be caught up and in jail like him. Hollywood, Hollyweird. See, I think he may have let them think that it's a swinging life. You know what I mean? I don't know what he told them. I'm not there. But like I said, he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. A judge, jury's going to have to decide what if he's guilty or not. Be kind in the comments, you guys. YouTube is blocking your comments. So be kind. Or just go on your page and talk. Fair use reaction clip.
He could be convicted of that. Now, we go on to Cassie, okay? Cassie Ventura Fine. Why, according to Prosecutor Slavic, is she a victim of sex trafficking?
Good question.
Number one secret to a magazine-worthy home interior.
Good question.
I know it sounds surprising, but blinds have an...
Yes, be kind. YouTube is blocking. They blocked a lot of the comments. I've only blocked one. A lot of times I don't really pay attention. Certain stuff I do, but as long as you're kind, do you. I'm not a juror. You know, these jurors have sat there hours and hours. And check this out. They were saying that some of the jurors were so bored, trying to stay awake. I'm surprised they're not complaining about that. Okay, you're over there asleep. You're not paying attention to XYZ. You got to wake up. But what can you do? Hours and hours of hearing repetitive information about this guy. Fair use reaction clip. Yes, be kind in the comments. They're blocking y'all.
When it came to count 2, and that
thanks YouTube.
Cassie, the prosecution said, before there was Jane, because they talked about all the points related to Jane, they talked about Cassie afterwards. So she had said before there was Jane, there was Cassie, and so they were really kind of laying out the roadmap as how this sex trafficking pretty much came to be, where it started with early points of their relationship, then it went into the abuse, then it went into the freak-offs, then it went into the end of their relationship. So at the beginning stages of their relationship, Cassie is around 19 years old. She signs a bad boy, and so the government's kind of pointing out not only is she dating a significantly older man, but also that this man also happens to be her boss. And so the government was also talking about just the abuse she endured. And I think that's something that they may have on their side, where they have photos, they have video evidence, i.e. the surveillance video from the Intercontinental Hotel, that kind of possibly may work in the government's favor, especially as it pertains to Cassie. And so the government said the defense doesn't deny the abuse, that the defendant just wants to pretty much call it domestic violence. And that's something that a lot of people, even on social media, are saying. They're like, this isn't sex trafficking, this is a domestic violence case. He should have been charged with domestic violence. But according to the government and the way they were laying it out, they're kind of saying, there's a lot of different examples when it comes to sex trafficking and Cassie. And they really kind of talked about the amount of violence examples, really pointing out that the ones they listed in their closing argument were just one of many. So they point to the 2007 incident that happened after a dinner, 2010 after a Princess party, or at Princess Party, where Princess Security even had to intervene. They talked about 2011, where Sean Combs attacked Cassie after he found out she was sleeping with Kid Cudi. 2013, when Sean Combs attacked Cassie in her apartment when Cassie was with Mia and Deontay. 2013, again that same year, where Sean Combs assaulted Cassie in Jamaica because she was taking too long in the bathroom. 2015, where Sean Combs beat up Cassie at a Las Vegas party, and D-Rock actually ended up crying after seeing Cassie's injuries. And then, of course, the 20...
Did y'all hear about that? That a person working for Diddy started crying once they saw Cassie's injuries? They should have got her out of there, away from there. For a person to physically cry once they saw how bad Cassie's injuries were and couldn't get her away from that situation. Baby. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
16 incident that happened at the Intercontinental Hotel, but the government also pointing out that Sean Combs attacked...
Let me see.
In that same year, where Sean Combs assaulted Cassie in Jamaica because she was taking too long in the bathroom. 2015, where Sean Combs beat up Cassie at a Las Vegas party, and D-Rock actually ended up crying after seeing Cassie's injuries. And then,
so it was D-Rock that was crying. Did D-Rock take the stand? Did KK take the stand? Fair use reaction clip. I'm just asking.
Of course, the 2016 incident that happened at the Intercontinental Hotel, but the government also pointing out that Sean Combs attacked Cassie's friends too, like Deontay Nash and Vanna and Mia and even Carrie Morgan, all of which had testified to when they were called to testify in this specific trial. But in terms of just kind of using even Dr. John Hughes' testimony to kind of help paint the picture a little bit more in these summations, the question always is, why didn't she leave? And so the government points to Dr. Hughes' testimony about Sean Combs' inner circle kind of helping preventing Cassie from leaving at times. They point to Christina Coram and Ruben and Roger Bonds and even D-Rock, where Christina Quorum did all the defendant's bidding. D-Rock was only loyal to the defendant. D-Rock, at one point, text messages were shown of D-Rock telling Sean Combs, Cass is calling the studio. She's looking for you. Sean Combs says, time for the ice. What's Cass up to? Does her eye look better? How is she holding up? And then D-Rock responds, well, Rio and Justin saw her. He said that a fight broke out in the club. And again, these are messages that the jury's already seen, but really kind of putting into context as it pertains to count 2. And then, of course, the freak-offs. And so the government really was talking about how over the course of their relationship, there were hundreds of freak-offs. I mean, the two were together for 11 years on and off, but the government showed text messages where Cassie said, I love our FOs when we both want them. And so I think kind of pointing.
And I really don't think he's plotting against. I just think that's their post. J-Lo never took the stand. You know, in any encounters that J-Lo and Diddy had, it seemed that J-Lo got along with him. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was even a picture or a time that when J-Lo was with Ben, I think there was a time, remember when there was the shutdown? And remember how he was calling different people? And I don't think it was A-Rod. Whatever. J-Lo was with somebody. And Diddy contacted J-Lo and whoever she was dating at that time. And they were just laughing and kikiing. I don't think he's plotting against. I've been seeing that, though. I've been seeing people say that. But I don't really think that's really what's going on. But they did talk about what happened at the college, and they did talk about what happened at that club yesterday. We covered it. It was towards Gold. It's the last 30 minutes of yesterday's video. They did talk about that. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Cassie initially consented to doing this, but towards the end, to her testimony and even pointing back to her lawsuit, just because she agreed to do it once doesn't mean she agreed to do it every single time, every single instance. And she even said that she had to do these freak-offs while she was on her menstrual cycle, and she had a UTI, and how escorts urinated in her mouth. And the government says that you being the jury, don't have to prove every freak-off with sex trafficking, just one. And so they said it's not an all or nothing thing. It's really just that one instant that could possibly make him guilty of sex trafficking.
And I will tell you, I thought it was brilliant for the prosecution to sprinkle in the testimony of Dr. Dawn Hughes to explain what sometimes would look like inconsistent behavior of a victim, to explain why this happens. And so to keep bringing her up at certain critical times as they talk about Cassie, very, very important. Now I want to move on to the final charges. So we got transportation to engage in prostitution, which I had said feels like the most straightforward charge. Prosecutors have to prove that he literally transported, not even sex workers, they don't even have to be prostitutes, just men across state lines for the purposes of sex work. That's it, right? Transporting them and the alleged victims for the purposes of sex work. I think they even highlighted today, you don't need force, fraud, or coercion. You don't even need really consent. So what did you say about transportation to engage in prostitution?
2025 IRS tax forgiveness.
Fair use reaction clip. Fair use reaction clip.
Prostitution.
Well, I think a lot of people have to remember that goes to count 3 and count 5. Count 3, again, going to Cassie, and then count 5 going to James. So he's charged 2 different ways with this, and then it also kind of falls under count 1 with RICO conspiracy too. But in terms of count 3 related to Cassie, the government says that the defendant told Cassie to book travel for these escorts, and that these escorts would travel to places like Ibiza, as an example, or New York City. And so they kind of brought back that flight summary chart, again, something that I think kind of works in their favor, because the jury can take this back when they go to deliberations and really see everything kind of laid out in a way like a roadmap. And so they point to one specific instance starting in August of 2009, August 26th of that year, where Sean Combs coordinated with Jules being the escort that Cassie and Sean Combs used often during their freak-offs, but I think also notably, he was the escort that was inside that hotel room during the March 2016 incident at the Intercontinental Hotel. But in terms of just transportation to engage in prostitution, they brought up flight records, including a $419 flight to get Jules over to New York City from Los Angeles, also a $220 limo service that was also paid for by Sean Combs, and that Sean Combs even texted Jules that he'll tip him more if he can make it out to New York City, because again, he's traveling from LA. So there's the transportation right there. And then the government points to the defendant paid for Clayton Howard, aka Dave, another escort that was used to fly him to Los Angeles from New York City.
And you got to remember, allegedly there was flights from this city to that city, and that's a bigger concern. Some of these women are mad that men are not flying them out. Some men are saying, well, I'm here, I want to date you, but you're 4 hours away. And some men are trying to say, well, I don't want to be caught up in. So men are, there was a young lady that fussed that the man wouldn't fly her out. Fair use reaction clip.
The government, again, relying on that flight records, that summary chart that was shown kind of towards the end of the trial, just saying that the defendant is guilty on count 3 in every single one of these instances. And it's a lot of instances on that specific chart. And so as it pertains to count 5 in relation to Jane, the government says that the defendant transported escorts or entertainers, as Jane calls them, like Cabral to Miami, to Los Angeles, to New York, because Cabral is specifically from Atlanta. I think he's even named as ATL in Sean Combs' phone. And so the government said that Jane, although she set up the travel and paid for the flights for Cabral to get over to New York or Miami or Los Angeles, that she was always reimbursed by Sean Combs. He also talked about how Jessica Ruiz also, and she's the travel agent, also set up travel because of course that's her job, but that obviously who are the payments coming from? The account holder being assigned to Sean Combs. And so the government even talked about the defendant transporting an entertainer or Paul, somebody that Jane and Sean Combs used during their hotel nights to Turks and Caicos, and he was traveling from Los Angeles for these hotel nights or Wild King nights, whatever you want to call them. And so the government said the defendant directed Jane to have hotel nights with 3 escorts, that Reggie, an escort or entertainer, whatever we want to call them, that he flew out from Vegas to Los Angeles. And so the government showed text messages from Sean Combs to Bridget, who runs Cowboys for Angels. No longer Garrett, it's now Bridget who's the contact for that, according to these messages, where Sean Combs says, LOL, damn, we don't want to have a tired situation, feel me. And Bridget says, Reggie is never tired. So again, transporting Reggie over from Vegas to Los Angeles, I think it's probably one of the strongest charges that the government has, in their holster here. But of course, the way the government was laying out these closing arguments, they really kind of, if I was somebody who didn't know this case at all and I was coming in for the first time listening to these closing arguments, I feel like the government has a really strong case on all counts, not just counts 3 and 5, but on all counts. But we'll see what happens when the defense starts their closing arguments, which should be possibly fireworks. We'll wait and see. But really quickly, Jesse, I kind of want to talk about just the demeanor of these closing arguments. Sure. They were very methodical. They were very a little monotone at times. But at the same time, I was kind of thinking there would be a moment of just animation, because it's a high-profile defendant, a high-profile trial, that there would just be moments of just like animation or projection and voice, some of that. But that didn't really happen. It really was, at times, it felt like Christy Slavic was really just kind of reading out all of her closing arguments, which I get. I can only imagine how that is to have to speak to a jury for hours on end. But in terms of just what I thought maybe that I would have loved to have seen her do is just be a little more personable in these closing arguments.
Okay, everyone, we did the video. We talked about what happened, closing statements. We will see what happens and what the decision will be in regards to the jurors. Will they finalize everything Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday? We'll see what happens. He's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I'm glad I've always said that from day one. A judge jury is going to have to decide if there's any wrongdoing, period. I thank you guys for being here. I thank you guys for subscribing. I can see that you guys have subscribed. Thank you. Can I get you guys to hit the like button? There's about 85 people in the building. Can we get the likes to 100? Please double tap that screen. Let's get the likes to 100. Please double tap that screen. Please double tap the screen. Let's get the likes to 100. Thank you. Let's get the likes to 100. It keeps us in the algorithm. Thank you. If you're watching from a phone, all you have to do is double tap the screen. Let's get the likes to 100. Thank you. Let's get the likes to 100. Double tap the screen for me, guys. If you're watching from a phone or a tablet, all you have to do is double tap the screen. If you already did, thank you. Yeah, so interesting. A lot of people are talking about what's happening, what's transpiring, what their thoughts are. We got to wait it out. We got to wait it out and see what the jury decides. They were given information. They've been trying to break it down the best way they can so the jury understands what's expected of them. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Do you think the jurors are going to do interviews, write books? Do you think the jurors are going to just be anonymous because they're concerned? If you were a juror, what do you, guilty or not guilty? If you were a juror, would you write a book, do interviews, or would you just be silent? Let me know in the comments. Continue to hit the like button, you guys, and thank you. We're almost at 100 likes. Double tap the screen for me. Thank you. We're at 93. We're almost at 100. Double tap the screen for me, please, and thank you. Yeah. Guilty, not guilty. If you were a juror, would you write a book? Would you do an interview? If you were a juror, would you write a book or would you do interviews? Or would you just go MIA and be silent? We're almost at 100. Double tap the screen for me, you guys. Thank you. And please subscribe. Thank you. I see some have subscribed. Not guilty, okay. You'd hide. They better hide. Okay. Yeah, whoever that is, YouTube is blocking your comments. I don't even have to do it. Someone's saying guilty verdict. And then if you did not catch it, it looks as if Kanye is working with one of his sons. So go check out that short. It looked like Kanye is working with King Combs to release some music, I guess sometime this month or next month. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be guilty, not guilty. It's all up to the jury. It's, he's innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. A judge and the jury's going to have to decide. We're almost at 100 likes. Double tap the screen for me, please. Double tap the screen for me if you're watching from a phone. We're almost at 100 likes. We'll see if the jurors speak up collectively and they all do an interview together. I was exhausted towards the end. The travel wasn't easy. We couldn't watch TV. We had to be careful going to family events, Yeah, like the video. We're almost at 100 likes, you guys. Continue to double tap the screen. Can I get 5 more people to hit the like button? Double tap the screen. We'll see what happens. And this is a big, big trial. But there was other big trials that were going on as well. The Karen Reed, she was found not guilty. So it's thumb down, not guilty. So it's thumbs up, guilty. Thumbs down, not guilty. Everybody has their opinion. We're almost at, we hit 100 likes. Thanks, you guys. Thank you. And thank you for subscribing. I can tell you guys have subscribed too. So we'll see. I'm sure I won't go live again today. Sometimes I try and go live twice in a day. It just depends on if something's trending. If you did not catch, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez is getting married. They have a lot of celebrities going to the wedding. I didn't see J-Lo. If she's trying to attend the wedding. But the K's and the J's are definitely trying to trend over the bride. Did y'all see all those Instagram posts in regards to the Kardashians? Some of the outfits are not that great looking. It's kind of mediocre outfits from the Kardashians, but they're trying to overtrend over the bride. She shouldn't have invited them, real talk. But congratulations to Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos. This is their wedding weekend. And Lauren's outfits are pretty nice too. Yep. Yeah, Lauren Sanchez, her outfits have been pretty nice. She looks really nice. Let me see. Portia Williams spoke out earlier this week. Simon, who is Portia's ex-fiance, spoke up. He felt that he was targeted. He's supposed to be paying Portia $40K per month. He's saying he wants to take it to court and fight that. A lot of celebrities are at this wedding. We saw Oprah, we saw Usher, the Kardashians and their outfits. I think there's a certain event that you can't have your phones and, go and check out my my shorts. And I think they showed a picture of one of them wearing Balenciaga. I think that's when a lot of people stop messing with them, the K's and the J's. Go look up what Balenciaga did years ago. That in itself is concerning. Yeah. They're at a billionaire's wedding. Kendall and Kylie's dresses are as simple and can be. And that could be comfortable. They want to be comfortable. But yeah, the K's and the J's are trying to outtrend the bride. Okay, so the K's and the J's will post something, then 2 hours later, it'll be the K's and the J's, a famous person, the K's and the J's, another famous person. They were trying to outshine the bride, and a lot of media was helping them. That's what they do. I think they shouldn't have invited them, real talk. That's what they do a lot of times when certain weddings go on. They want to outtrend what's going on. Simple outfits. The mom looked at, like, in one outfit, she looked like she was going to a funeral. And then the outfit, the Kim's outfit, we've seen that before. It is what it is, but that was Lauren's choice. A lot of celebrities are at this wedding, and the K's and the J's are doing everything they can for media attention, clicks, and views. And then remember how yesterday Kim was spotted with Orlando? Orlando just broke up with Katy Perry. Kim wants to trend with Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom. This girl that went through a breakup, and here you are. And then the media is talking about, oh, looks like she's giving him a hug, you know, whatever. She wanted to trend. She plotted and planned that. She wanted to trend with Orlando. That's sad. That's so sad. And then allegedly they showing her with a short top, and then she wearing Balenciaga. She wear Balenciaga at certain events. Go check out what Balenciaga did 2 or 3 years ago. So concerning. But it is what it is. Okay, so yeah. Some people's outfits are really, really nice. They're bringing it. Yep, they're bringing it. I saw a picture of Halle. She dancing in a swimsuit. Did y'all see that video where Kanye West dressed his girlfriend in a candy bikini? You know those little candies where you can bite and it's on a little string, you can bite it? Yeah, he put her in one of those. But go back, look. A lot of media was posting the K's and the J's, and they should have been posting more of Lauren and Jeff Bezos. You'll see Lauren, a Kardashian. You'll see Lauren and a famous person, and then another picture of the Kardashian. They want to trend over the bride. That's sad. But that's maybe she wanted some of the media press, and that's why she's friends with them. But remember how the mom taught them, you know, try and be around people that you inspire to be around or whatever. Yeah, they saying allegedly Radar Online is saying Jennifer Lopez is crippled with anxiety over the Sean Diddy Combs. Because like I told y'all, they talked about his other previous concerns in regards to the law. So I really don't think that he's focusing on trying to get out. But yeah, go check out Lauren's dresses. They're really nice. Okay. Thanks for being here, everyone. Focus on healthy, safe relationships. Be around people that's loving, kind, and respectful. If you did not subscribe, please subscribe. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships and research. Fair use is use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged, in our opinion, and for entertainment purposes only. Yes, thanks for being here, everyone. Focus on healthy, safe relationships. Be around people that's loving, kind, and respectful. In regards to Diddy, he's innocent until proven guilty. They're saying that J-Lo is concerned that her name has just recently been mentioned because they talked about what happened at that club. And they've been talking about that club situation for a while. I really don't think he's not focused on J-Lo. He's not. He's just not focused on J-Lo. She's concerned that her name must have been brought up in regards to, I guess, the closing statements on some of the issues. His name has been brought up in regards to the college situation and in regards to the club situation. And then remember, J-Lo was married to Ben. And when all that came out, Ben was like, oh no, I can't have my name attached to that. So yeah, it is what it is. Let's see what happens in regards to the jury, and we'll see what they decide. We'll see what the jury decide. We'll see if they're done Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Will they be finished before the 4th of July? Will they release him? Will he be home by the 4th of July? I don't know. But well wishes. I'm sure the jurors are so happy. This is almost over. Will they give him a fair verdict? We'll see. Thanks for being here, everyone. Goodbye. Have a great day.